Welcome, everyone, to Real Estate on the Up, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of the real estate world in Orlando. I'm your host, Kyle Madorin, and on this show, we're all about pulling back the curtain with the unfiltered truth about real estate. We're not just here to sell houses. We're here to provide concierge-style service because everyone loves being treated like a VIP. This podcast is your go-to resource for transparency, integrity, and the knowledge you need to make smarter real estate decisions. Whether you're a seasoned investor or a first-time home buyer, we've got you covered. So buckle up and get ready to move up in the world of real estate. It's time for Real Estate on the Up. I'm your host, Kyle Madorin, and today we have an extraordinary guest who embodies expertise, success, and a true passion for real estate. Joining us is John Hoffman, a seasoned real estate professional whose remarkable career spans over 35 years in both Florida and New York. John has called Tampa home for almost 3 decades, but his journey began in Rochester. As one of the most accomplished realtors in the country, John ranks in the top half of the top 1% of agents nationwide. He's led the #1 top-selling Keller Williams team in North Florida for multiple years, and his achievements don't stop there. John has been recognized with countless accolades, including the Keller Williams Triple Platinum Production Award. John's expertise spans luxury homes, new construction, commercial and foreclosure properties, and even probate real estate, a niche where he's become a trusted advisor. On top of all this, John has shared his knowledge as a former coach for the Mike Ferry organization, the nation's leading real estate training company, and he's worked with corporate clients such as SunTrust and Transamerica. Today, we're diving into John's insights, stories, and strategies that have made him a standout in the industry in Florida and New York. So let's get started. Welcome to the show, John Hoffman.
Hey, thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Great. I'm so glad you're joining us. It's amazing to have a professional like you on the show, able to share your expertise with everyone listening. I know you have a lot of knowledge to share. Just in the few minutes we were chatting before the show started, I'm really excited to dive into this today. So let's start kind of at the beginning. I'd like to hear about your story and how you ended up in Tampa from New York. How did that all come to be?
Well, I started, as you mentioned, in Rochester in real estate. I went to the Miami University of Oxford, Ohio, and went right into real estate because I didn't want to work for a corporation because I'm not a corporate guy. I've always been self-employed. And after about 10 years there, my fiance and I decided, let's get out of New York State for a variety of reasons. And believe it or not, we moved down to Florida because I wanted to open up bagel restaurants. And I did that for a couple of years, and we ended up landing in Tampa. And after 2 years of being in the restaurant business, I'm like, okay, I'm going right back to real estate. And we picked Tampa for the restaurants because most people don't realize Hillsborough County, Tampa, the average age is 36 years old. It's 98% year-round residents, and it was the first city in the country people ate out over 50% of their meals.
Wow. Well, that was great research then. Perfect spot, it sounds like.
Yeah, it was, and we're happy to be here. We've been here now for 31 years. And of those 31 years, I've been selling real estate right at 28, 29 years.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, so I got licensed in 1986 in New York. I was 5 at the time, and I don't look back. It's been a wonderful career, and I encourage anyone that wants to work hard to consider real estate.
Well, you've accomplished some amazing things in that time, and your passion really shows. So I want to talk about how you do what you do. And it's going to be hard to cram everything into the time that we have because there's so much that I'd love to talk to you about. But we have buyers, sellers, and agents who all listen to the show. And I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about your unique approach and how you work with sellers specifically, because this has become an increasingly challenging market in which to sell a home. So tell us a little bit about how you help achieve sellers, how to get top dollar for them, the action that you take to get them under contract, and what makes you a little bit different than other agents out there.
Okay, well, let's start at the beginning of that process. So we have a listing opportunity, whether it's an expired or for sale by owner or a past client or a call in or they respond to our marketing. It doesn't really matter. So we're going to make an appointment, and then we're going to follow it up either at that time the appointment's made or usually in the next 3 to 5 hours, where we ask 19 questions. We are, trying to do a deep dive into the seller, where they're moving, why they're moving, what their motivation is, how much they owe on the property. And so it gives us a really good, healthy picture on what they're trying to accomplish. After we do that, we send out a really well-constructed pre-listing packet that explains Tampa Home Group, our marketing, everything we do. And it's going to answer almost all the questions that a seller might have about what we do and how we do it. And then we show up at the listing appointment and explain, pricing and comps and try to guide them. So our job as listing agents is to give the most accurate information as we possibly can, so the sellers have the realistic expectations. And so if somebody thinks their house is worth 700, we explain to them why it's not, and just to give them that information. And if it turns out that they really don't have to move, and if they can't get that price that they want, we tell them, you might not want to go on the market.
I love that integrity of being honest, telling them really what the situation is, because it's vastly different now than it may have been a few years ago. So their perspective may not be in sync with the reality of what we're looking at today.
So, well, you're right. So then how do you explain that, right? So how do you explain to a seller, well, this isn't 2 years ago. This isn't the COVID market. The market we're in right now, I call it the COVID hangover. And this is similar because I've been in the business so long. I went through the S&L crisis. I went through the meltdown of 8 and 9. And matter of fact, sent out an email to my database in January of 2006 saying the market's going to crash, sell. But this is a different market, right? So what is the COVID hangover? 2 years ago, 3 years ago, there was 1 month of inventory on the market and buyers were overlooking deficiencies. You need paint, need carpet, need landscaping, the roof's old, not a problem. I need a house, because there's no inventory. So if sellers think they can go on the market and it needs to be painted or carpeted or cleaned up, and the buyers are going to overlook that, that's not going to happen.
Right.
Right. And so we have to be able to effectively explain that to sellers. But we take it a step further. We get a listing, we explain that to everybody, the sellers, but then we bring in an interior designer on our dime and help declutter, possibly do some staging, to coordinate myself with the stager. Do we need to paint? What color do we need to paint? Because the house right now, when you've got a pretty big inventory compared to the past, the house with the least number of deficiencies wins if it's priced correctly.
That's a great point. That's an excellent way to put it.
And so our job is to educate the seller so they understand. So when we go on an expired listing and explain this to them, and they always say the same thing. Geez, John, everything you said makes complete sense. Why didn't my other realtor tell me? I say probably because they didn't know. If you've never been through like the S&L or the 2007-8 market, or now this market, if you're a realtor for the last 5 years, this is brand new to you. So I don't expect you to have this knowledge, but you might want to go learn it.
That's a great point. And the knowledge also comes not only with the time they've been in the market, but the volume of what they do, because we know that there's constant changes in our industry, both in terms of the marketplace and the economy, but also in terms of the technology, the paperwork, the contracts and such. And so there's a big difference between an agent who sells 2 or 3 homes a year to family members and an agent who's selling 40 homes a year or more. Those agents, they do it so frequently, they constantly are practicing their craft. They're constantly running the numbers. They're constantly doing the value research. They know exactly how to get a home sold and to present it in such a way that's appealing to the marketplace. But it starts at the very front end of that with valuation, which you mentioned that is one of your specialties. So tell us a little bit about what most realtors don't know and how to price a home correctly now that we're in a unique marketplace again.
Great question. So let's look at an area in my market called New Tampa. Because, when you looked at New Tampa in November, if you're going to these websites, whether it's Zillow, Realtor.com or wherever, they're going to show that the market is up, 2.5% year over year. And so that was accurate when you look at it year over year in November. And so you need to do a deeper dive. So I broke it up from January of 23 till January 24 to June of 24, and the market was up 3%. But when you actually looked at it from June to November, the market was down 2%.
Hmm.
Right? So if you're going to use those numbers on a $600,000 house, those numbers are going to show that, well, according to Zillow or these old comps, my house is actually worth 615. So let's list it at 625 because sellers are going to say they want to leave room to negotiate, right? The reality is that house is only worth 600. And if you price it at 625, you've overpriced the market. And that's an example why a house at 625, where they think it's priced correctly, isn't going to sell.
Yeah.
If you were to take the market's actually come down 2% since then, so then they're actually overpriced. So they go at 625, they sit there, and then hopefully they get to 600. Now, if they would have started at 600 to begin with, and the house had been cleaned and painted and recarpeted, whatever you've done, that's one of the homes, because 20% of our listings are going under contract in less than 12 days. So pricing is absolutely critical, and I don't suggest a seller ever leave room to negotiate. We just had an offer come in on one of our listings last night. I talked to the realtor this morning and basically said, guys, you guys came in a little bit low. If there's a better value on this type of house, on this type of lot on the market, I suggest you go get it. Because we countered really hard, because we didn't have to come down in price, because we were the best price in the area. So once you know that and you've got the confidence, you can really represent your seller very, very well. Because when you represent your seller well and they're very happy, then they come back to you and they refer you clients, right? And so whether you're working with buyers or sellers, the realtor's number one job is to create value to their client.
I love the angle of attack that you use to not leave room to negotiate. And I think that's such a great point, because we hear all the time where someone says, well, we're only $25,000 over what you said. I mean, that's not that much money. But the reality is buyers are very value oriented right now because of interest rates, because of how many options there are on the market. There's more inventory now than there was in the past. So they're not feeling like they're in a rush. They really want to get the best value they can.
Well, let's take that a little deeper. So let's look at why that price is so important. So if the house, now let me back up. If the seller's adamant that they want to start at 625, they're the boss, all right? I'm going to do it. I'm going to try to convince them not to. So if the house should be at 600 and we go to 625, that means we're competing against homes, 625, 650. I don't believe we compete well with them. At 600, we're going to get all the buyers looking from 550 to 600 and the ones from 600 to 650. So the buyers that are going to probably buy that house aren't even going to see it, because we've outpaced their price point. So I want to double the showings, try to get the group from 6 to 650 in, even though I'm not, in this example, I don't think we're going to compete really well. But the ones that want to see the house, it's up to 600, 590, 595, $600,000 buyers. It's not even going to show up in their search or their email box if they're working with an agent or they've signed up their own searches. So they're
not going to see it at all.
They're not going to see it. So the reason we make price adjustments is not to convince the buyers that have already come in. It's to open it up to a new category of buyers.
Right.
So
and it's so important to get those views, the number of views. It all translates number of views into showings, into offers. You have to get that online traffic.
Well, correct, but you want to get the bodies in place. And so most agents don't know enough only because it's experience. It's not that they're not smart, but if you're selling 10 homes a year, 5 homes a year, it's going to take you 75, 100 years to get to this knowledge base. Right? Listen, I started off new a long time ago. I had to buy a washer and dryer once. I mean, I've made some of these errors, but it's really not a mistake. It's a learning experience, right? And so that's why pricing real estate is so challenging, but you've got to be able to have this in your toolbox to be able to explain to sellers why the pricing is so critical and why their house might not meet their needs. Because in almost every example we hear, seller wants to price the house on their needs. I really need to sell it for X. And then I've got to be able to look at them and smile and say, well, you know what? Unfortunately, the buyers don't take that into consideration when they put an offer in what your need is.
Right.
It's
That's
got to be
true.
it's got to be based on hard numbers and the competition, what you're competing with, and really being able to read the market and know the market.
And there's another challenge that we see come into play sometimes with sellers, and that's some of these online automated valuation models. Zillow and Redfin that may give Realtor.com too now. It may give an erroneous impression of value or of what's happening in the marketplace. And why is that? What's going on there?
Well, they're trying to drive track, and Zillow is fantastic. Great. Here's a great example of them. So if you go and type a property address in any of these places, they've got one big number, say 625. But in the fine print, they're going to say anywhere from 560 to 640, right? They've got an $80,000 swing. So with Zillow, what we would do is I'd be going out on a listing appointment and we would get Zillow's opinion of value. We would take it with us. And then after we went on the market, within 24 hours, their opinion of value changed to become more in line with ours.
Mm-hmm.
And these automated systems, and I even see on YouTube these ads, let the AI price your listing. Well, how much money did Zillow lose 3 years ago?
Oh, it's hundreds of millions of dollars.
Hundreds of millions of dollars. So if their opinion of value lost them $700 million, why would you trust that as a homeowner? Because they don't take anything into consideration. The lot, dysfunctional floor plan, dysfunctional lot. Is it dated? Is it not? Or did they put in really bad color tile? All of these things go into coming up with a valuation that unless you're in the property to see it, you're never going to come up with a real accurate number. You don't have the ability to pay any attention to those numbers.
Yep.
Would be my suggestion.
Yeah. Yeah. It's much better to get a knowledgeable real estate agent who will look at that by hand. They will take into consideration the comps, make adjustments, and really give you a value. But you have to not only, have an agent, do that. That's not, just AI, but you have to have a knowledgeable agent who understands how to select the right comps and how to make the adjustments, because no two homes are the same. And it takes experience to learn how to do that correctly.
Well, you're absolutely right. Now, take a dysfunctional floor plan. You could have two houses. They're both 5 years old next to each other. They're both 3,000 square feet, 2 stories, but the one is going to have a lower value than the other because there's more air conditioned square footage upstairs than downstairs, and that's not popular with buyers.
Right.
Right. And so you've got to be able to explain that to a seller because no one told them, their agent that they worked with. So, quite often, the sellers are a little disappointed on the suggested list price because we find out they overpaid when they bought.
Yeah.
So that expertise works both ways. It works with buyers and sellers. Right. If you've got an agent that can really guide you on pricing of the property that you're buying, I've got a new client that he overpaid by $30,000 3 years ago on his property. He found out after he bought it that was his agent's for sale.
Oh, wow.
And so, the agent was happy she did her first sale, but you know what? You don't know the market. You don't know pricing. And that's why I find really interesting in today's market, people tend to be more concerned with commissions rather than the agent's knowledge.
Yeah, they don't have the foresight. They're not looking into the future far enough to understand the impact, the implication of what that decision could produce for them, the challenges in the future. So yeah.
Well, in my analogy, I say to my clients is listen, there's attorneys for $150 an hour, $250 an hour, $400 an hour. Do you think the one at $400 an hour is a much more skilled attorney than the one at 150? And yeah, well, it works the same way with real estate.
Yep.
Almost any profession, CPAs, the people that are the best tend to get paid a little bit more than the people that aren't as good.
That's right. There's always someone who's willing to do it cheaper, and that's generally not the best ones in the marketplace, for sure.
Well, that's the decision every buyer and seller needs to make, but they don't understand until the transaction's over that they might have made a mistake.
Right. Yeah. And then it's too late, unfortunately. So one of the questions we get asked a lot is about the current market, because it does seem like things change rapidly and we're seeing a different market today than previously. And a lot of people ask, what's going to be happening in the next 6 months, the next year? So tell us a little bit about your marketplace, because it is different everywhere. So in the Tampa area, why is inventory high? Why are median sales prices dropping, but dropping slowly, not as fast as maybe some people expect who predict a crash to occur? Tell us a little bit about your market and what you predict is going to be occurring in the future.
Well, let me talk. This is a great question because in my market, the four areas that are closest to us are New Tampa, Wesley Chapel, Lutz, and Land O'Lakes. Okay. And I just pulled all these numbers yesterday. The median sales price in three of those four markets is up 1.5% to 2%. The current inventory is right at all four of them between 3.75 and 4.125 months of inventory. That is still slightly a seller's market, right? So the number one thing that we need to do wherever you are is just kind of look at those numbers. What are the sales in the last 30 days compared to how many active listings? Do the simple division. That's your months of inventory. Now, I can go look at like Cape Coral or even Blue Ridge, Georgia, where they've got 8-10 months of inventory, yet their pricing's flat, right? So we're not seeing a lot of price coming down. What's going on in the market is that if you're entering the market at the right price and the right condition, you're going to sell. If you price it based on your needs and your needs are above market value, you're not going to sell. Now, the next part of that is then you go to what is the impact that new construction's having. So we've got a lot of new construction here, Wesley Chapel, Riverview, Apollo Beach area, where the insurance on a $500,000 new construction is half of that on a resale that's older than 5 years old. And builders are offering incentives, $25,000, $20,000 towards closing costs, matching upgrades. So that's having a real impact on the resale market. So even within these certain areas, you're going to have different pockets that you've got to be aware of. One part of Wesley Chapel, for example, resale is going to have a harder time than 5 miles away because they're not as close to new construction. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So then another pocket is the townhouse market, because the townhouse market is down up to 20% on the older townhomes because the builders flooded the market with 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2.5 bath, 1-car garage townhouses for $299,999 and giving you $15,000 for closing costs. So within that whole Wesley Chapel market, I've got the townhouse market that's taking a hit on the resale. So when you go talk to a client and you can explain to them all this information, because I'm educating them, now they understand, I've given them value. And when you give people value and your knowledge, they want to work with you. So when I went and looked at these numbers that I just talked about in Lutz, Wesley Chapel, et cetera, the Zillow numbers, the Redfin numbers, the Rocket Mortgage numbers, they weren't close to being correct. Mm-hmm. They're off by as much as 10% on median pricing.
That's a lot.
And you cannot try to look at a market and bundle in townhouses and condos, if there are any, with single families, because each one of those is a separate valuation that you have to have.
Right. Yeah.
Right. The condo market right now in New Tampa, there's 14 months worth of inventory, and they've dropped 20% in value over the last 6 months. So if you're going to bundle that with resale, you might be leaving you're going to misread the value of single family resales. So there's new construction, there's single family resales, and then you either got condos or townhouses, and they've all got to be looked at independently.
Yeah, vast differences in those segments.
And so I look at these numbers every day.
Because you're a pro.
You've got to know what's going. So if you're going to wait for the newspaper, or you're going to wait for Redfin or anyone to tell you what the market's doing, their information's always 6 months late, minimum.
Yep.
And the one thing you never want to do is go on YouTube and watch these guys that are trying to get their videos looked at that are predicting a 50% drop in value, because those guys have no idea what they're talking about because they've never sold real estate. And if they have, they've sold less than 20 homes in their career, because I looked them up.
It's a great point. They're trying to sell you on something, but it's not on what's really happening in the marketplace. That's true.
Yeah.
Well, this has been fantastic. You're obviously an exceptionally knowledgeable professional. If anyone out there is looking for a top agent with your expertise in the new Tampa, Wesley Chapel area, what's the best way that they can get in touch with you?
Best way for me is my email, and it's my first name, John, John, at TampaHomeGroup.com.
That's excellent. So please reach out to John if you're looking for help in that area. No one knows the market better. He is a true professional. You heard him today. I mean, he knows his numbers inside and out. He knows valuation inside and out, and he puts great emphasis on customer service, which is near and dear to my heart also. So John, thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasure having you on the show. I really appreciate you joining us.
Oh, anytime. Thanks for having me again.
Absolutely. Wonderful chat. And thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Real Estate on the Up. Take care. As we conclude another eye-opening episode of Real Estate on the Up, I want to express my appreciation for joining us. Thank you for being a valuable part of the Real Estate on the Up community. Your time and engagement mean the world, so make sure you subscribe and leave a review. Your real estate goals are my priority, and my team and I are here to provide the personalized attention and service that have earned us high recognition. If you have questions, need guidance, or are ready to make a move, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm just a message away. I'm Kyle Madorin, one of Rate My Agent's top 100 in the United States, signing off. Until next time, take care and make those real estate dreams a reality.